Hi, y'all. So here's a different thing. I'm going to do a little video review of the shows that I saw this weekend in New York. So, first up is Potus, or Behind Every Great Dumbass Are Seven Women Trying to Keep Him Alive. That's the full title of the show. There are seven incredible women in this flat out farce. The basic plot is that White House Chief of Staff, the White House Press Secretary, the First Lady, the personal secretary to the president, a White House reporter, and the president's lesbian sister and his girlfriend, who happens to be an Iowa farm girl who is also pregnant, are wrapped up in dealing with a stupid thing that the president said about his wife. To give you a hint, the first word of the show is "see you next Tuesday." And then they're trying to figure out how to cover up what they think is his accidental killing. It is ridiculous, and I haven't laughed that hard in quite a while. The total estrogen power on the stage was overwhelmingly brilliant. The big surprise for me in this was Julianne Hough as the girlfriend. She was so funny. The always brilliant Julie White as the chief of staff, and the absolutely hysterical Rachel Dratch as the personal secretary were both worthy of their Tony nominations. Tony Award-winning director Susan Stroman keeps the action moving at a very brisk pace, and the use of the revolve was brilliant. Unfortunately, this closed 3 days after I saw it. I doubt that it'll tour, but it'll be a huge hit regionally. If you get a chance, don't miss it. Next up was Funny Girl. With all the controversy surrounding this production, Beanie's casting and her lack of ability to sing it, and the production's lack of love from awards bodies, I was a little skeptical going in. We built the trip around this production. So when I went in, I had somewhat low expectations. I had a couple of issues with the production and choices that were made by the director, but I was thrilled to see Julie Benko's Fanny. She was thrilling from beginning to end. I hope this leads to true stardom for her because she's fantastic. We saw the cover for Nick, Jeremiah James, and he was great, really terrific. He had an absolutely beautiful voice and is stunningly good looking and a great dancer. There's a lot of stuff added to this production for Nick because the role is usually played by Ramin Karimloo. Hi, Bravo. I'm talking. Leave me alone. Jared Grimes as Eddie is a showstopper, and his tap number is astonishingly good. He's charming and he sparkles on stage. The only disappointment for me in this production was Jane Lynch as Mrs. Bryce. She's miscast in my opinion, and she's doing a kind of a knockoff version of her Mrs. Maisel character. I'm really glad that Funny Girl's back on Broadway, and I hope that the addition of Leah Michele and Tova Feldshuh in September will give this production some legs. I fear it'll never be revived again, and that's really a shame. Next up was A Strange Loop, a big, black, queer-ass American musical, the most original show I have seen in years, and there has never been anything like this on a Broadway stage. Written by Tony winner Michael R. Jackson, it tells the story of Usher, who's a big queer black writer writing a show about a big queer black writer who's writing a show about a big queer black writer. Well, you get the picture. While this concept wasn't new, Title of Show did that first, this was so raw and so loud and so filthy in a really good way. The show is basically Usher and his 6 thoughts and how he navigates queerness and blackness in the 21st century. I was moved, I laughed, I cringed, I cried. I found myself in this story. This is not a show for everyone, but it's an important story and important characters that need to be seen. The role of Usher was played by the matinee cover Kyle Ramar Freeman, and this young man was astonishing. This role has got to be a beating for an actor. It's got a lot to say, and a lot of it isn't really easy to say. There are many aspects of Usher's story that hit really, really close to home for me right now. I'll be really curious to see how this tours. Middle America is going to have problems with songs like AIDS is God's punishment and Inwood Daddy. But I hope winning the Tony brings people into the theater and they get a glimpse into Usher's life. This is a life that should be seen. Moulin Rouge. Truth, beauty, freedom, and love. Based on the 2001 Baz Luhrmann film of the same name, this is flash and trash of the highest order, and it was the most fun I had all weekend. Starring as Satine and Christian, Ashley Lauren and Derek Klena are spectacular as the central lovers in this show. The show is beautifully designed. Costume, lights, and sets are all Tony Award-winning designs. And it's not hard to see why. Although this was the truncated Tony season, all of the design work is eye-popping and wonderful. The major Tony that it didn't win was original book of a musical. And that's its weakest point, and it didn't matter. It is visually stunning, beautifully sung, and just a damn good time. I saw this only because it won the Tony, and I'm really glad I did. It's the most sheer fun I've had in a theater in quite a while. Next up was my favorite of the show, of the trip, Into the Woods. This is the City Center's encore production that moved to Broadway, and I'm so grateful it did. I was originally scheduled to fly home on Sunday, and when this transfer was announced, I changed my flight so I could see it. It is, in my opinion, the perfect production of this show. On my last trip to New York in early 2020, I extended my trip to see the first preview of Company, the last Sondheim show he saw before his death. I feel like this kind of bookended that experience with the first Sondheim show after we lost him. The simplistic staging of this gives it even more power. I also think that all of us having survived the pandemic gives this show even more weight. Filled with stunning performances all the way around. It's wonderfully directed by the City Center Encore's artistic director. I believe her name is Lear de Bessonnet. I think I'm pronouncing that right. She has directed a funny, poignant show that has wonderful use of puppetry that just adds to this incredible production, with a shout out to Kennedy Kanagawa for bringing Milky White to life. As for the highlights of performances, and there is not a slouch in this entire company, Bettina Miller is delicious as the witch. And speaking of delicious, Gavin Creel and Joshua Henry are perfect as the princes. Brian Darcy James, his Baker, has heart and humor, and he's in great voice. But for me, there are two standouts in this production: Sarah Bareilles as the baker's wife, and Julia Lester as Little Red. Sarah's rendition of Moments in the Woods was my favorite I've ever heard. Soaring, tender, funny, and sweet. It was absolute perfection. I will buy this cast recording just to get that version of Moments in the Woods. Little Red has historically been my least favorite character in this piece. I just don't care about her. But Julia Lester is obviously having the time of her life in this production, and it shows. She's funny, heartbreaking, and at times wonderfully bratty in the role. They're in the process of rotating people in and out of the show, and I hope that Lester continues with the show and gets awards recognition at the end of the season, because she's that good. I hope this becomes Broadway's newest Chicago, with people going in and out of it over the course of a very, very long run. It's a wonderful tribute to Mr. Sondheim, and I know he'd be proud. Speaking of Chicago, that's what I saw last on this trip. Prior to my visit to the Ambassador Theater, I had seen a show in every working Broadway house except for this one. Chicago has been running there since January of 2003, and I had a slot for a Sunday night, so I took the opportunity to check this house off my list. Eric Bergen is a terrific Billy Flynn, and I was surprised to see that Charlotte Dembois was back in the show as Roxy. She has such an ease about her, and while I could tell that she had her knee wrapped, there was no indication of that in her performance. Charity Angel Dawson was a sassy Mama Morton, and Arlo is a great Mary Sunshine. My only disappointment really was Lana Gordon's Velma. It just didn't work for me. Overall, this is a terrific show that will seemingly run forever at the Ambassador. But when it does close, man, that theater needs a good facelift. This was by far the most unique group of shows I've ever seen in one trip. A farce, a classic American musical comedy, a completely original new American classic, a flashy jukebox musical, and a brilliant Sondheim revival, along with the longest-running American musical in Broadway history. It was a great weekend of shows, and I'm so glad I went. Okay, y'all. Sorry this is a little long. I apologize. I love you. Take care. Peace out.